to another episode of OHKO, a Pokemon VGC podcast. Hope everyone's been doing well, whether you're grinding the ladder, whether you have your online tournaments, whether you're taking a Pokemon break. Excited that you're here. My name is Sierra Dawn. I'm one of the hosts, and I've joined here, of course, by my co-host, Joe Brown. I'm not gonna lie, I have definitely been taking the break from NA events as just, a proper break from Pokemon. Help the brain juices flow a little bit more once you get back into it. Kind of inspired by Wolf taking a break forever and coming back and winning an event, really.
Yeah, so that means the next time, since you take such a break, the next time you're in a caster battle, you're just gonna come out and rock it.
Smoke my opponent. You better hope you're not on the other side of that table. That's all I'm saying.
I do think about it, like, because I'm kind of screwed if you and I ever face off in a caster battle, because you're my resource. Like, you're all my EV trading and Terra shards and everything. So, like, if I have a funky team for a caster battle, you're gonna know about it. You're gonna know the ins and outs and how to beat it.
You know what might be a little bit comforting, though? Is even if I didn't know any of the information, I'd still smoke you. So, like, it's kind of like...
that makes me feel much better, yes.
Potato type of way. But I'm sure someone else on the squad would help you out.
Yeah, I also think, obviously, the North American break is almost over. We're almost at Vancouver, but it has been nice to have a little bit of a break from traveling and every couple weeks and stuff. But, I've been relaxing, but you've been on the grind, Sierra, because you had a big news announcement. I think everybody wants to hear about it. It's very exciting news.
It is really exciting. Though this is a Pokemon podcast, so I'm sure if it's not Pokemon related, there's a lot of people that are like, But
they care about us. They want to know what's going on in your life, Sierra.
Yes, but I'm really excited. So I got picked up to be a host for Rainbow Six. So anyone who doesn't know, I do a lot of FPS broadcast work when I'm not involved with Pokemon. Been involved with Valorant. Valorant's been the main thing. Also other Riot titles like League, Wild Rift. And this is my first opportunity to get involved with Rainbow Six, and it's as part of their North America League. Like, it is a really big deal. I'm super, super excited about it. And honestly, everyone's been so kind of welcoming, like the other talent, even people like over in Europe that I won't work with on this product, still reaching out like, hey, this is exciting. If you ever need help, let me know. So it's been a really good day so far. I'm not gonna lie. I'm really excited for this career opportunity. I'm excited for this game. I love diving into just new games, new communities, and I don't know, the group of people are already awesome. It's cool. It's cool.
No, I'm really happy for you. I saw you use the classic, the GIF of the signing the signature or whatever, and I'm like, all right, something's going up or something's going on, and then the announcement. I remember back in the day, I used to play a lot of Rainbow Six in like on the 360 when I was in high school with my friends, like one of the older versions of it. And then like Rainbow Six Siege has been around forever. It's been a staple in the FPS world. So I've never actually played it. I've always wanted to. I would like watch the esports events, but like I never played it. So like maybe now I can learn, since I'm gonna have a friend that's gonna be broadcasting it.
Yeah, no, like we do play. I am absolutely garbage at it, which is funny because I've played FPSs for years. Like, FPSs are not new to me, and like you played Valorant with me, like that I'm actually like
cracked.
Pretty dang. I was gonna say pretty dang okay, but like I'm actually pretty decent. Smoked in R6, not even close. Like it is such a big brain game, and I have put this work and I have put this time, and you know what? You don't necessarily have to be good at aiming and good at the mechanics of the game that you play if it is something like an FPS. But oh my god, I am so bad.
You'll get there. You'll get there.
No, I've put in the effort.
Maybe this is the game that I should play with you, because you can't. Because since you were good at Valorant and you would always trash me because I'd never played and I was bad. Since we're both bad at Rainbow Six, then you can't trash on my skills.
Yeah, no, honestly, like we have a server where like we'll play like different games, like a bunch of Pokemon people. We all play different non-Pokemon games. It's a lot of fun. We play like different shooters and whatnot. And if it's Valorant, normally I'm popping off. And we all played R6 one day, and we actually did do customs like 2v2s, 3v3s, and 5 out of the 6 of us just got smoked. It was literally just only one person carrying everyone else or bodying everyone else. It was terrible, but it was fun. It was fun. So I enjoy the game. I enjoy watching it a lot more because I can't get smoked watching it. But maybe one day I can actually be good enough at the game that I cannot be so ashamed of that. But I'm excited for this opportunity because it's a pretty big broadcast thing. It's definitely a lot of it's happening during the same time as Pokemon stuff, so it's like it'll be double studying up. But it's good. I like keeping busy, you know.
But you're always busy. I don't know how it'll work out for us. Don't forget us along the way. Don't forget the OHKO community on your ascent to glory.
Okay, that's all right. First off, not gonna ever forget Pokemon. I love Pokemon. And not gonna forget the podcast. We've come so far. So yes, but speaking of the podcast, should talk about our plans for today because obviously when there is enough of a downtime, stuff to talk about starts to dwindle just a wee little bit. So thought it would be fun for this episode in particular. We do have our questions of the week that people submit, and we can only pick one. But we decided to pull up a bunch of these past questions and talk about things that our community has been curious about and kind of not quite a Q&A, but kind of like that esque sort of podcast. So a couple of the different things that we'll be talking about during the episode, we'll be talking about very much so a recent event like Utrecht, as well as like teams that we see, how they help the metagame, talk about the metagame in general. We'll be talking about regionals in general, a couple of the things that people have been wondering if they haven't quite attended or barely get to attend. Talk about Scarlet and Violet a little bit, and we'll also talk about this actually interesting tweet coming out that was basically what makes an event successful. So yeah, do we just hop into it? Do we just go?
Yeah, I think so. We have somewhat of a relaxed episode this week because next week we get back on the grind. That's our Vancouver, regional preview. We're gonna have all our predictions and all the great things that we do before an event. So hopefully, if people are traveling to Vancouver, they'll be able to listen to the podcast on their travel and get excited for the event. But I think one thing I think we also saw, I don't have a tweet pulled up of it, Sierra, was that after NAIC, there's no championship point events. Did you see this on Twitter? I was gonna say we start there.
Yeah, that's actually a really, really good call. So yeah, there was an announcement that there is no way to be getting championship points during June. They are cutting the events off. Minus NAIC for the way to get championship points, I will clarify, but they are cutting locals off. It's interesting, but considering like the conversations about like championship points events kind of like leading up to NAIC or at NAIC, I don't necessarily think the decision doesn't make sense. Just because I do think that kind of gets complicated with an event if there's going to be a bunch of championship points events happening around NAIC. I am like, that does mean at NAIC, if you just don't do well at the main event, there is no side events. There's not going to be a MSS then. There's not going to be a PC like at the event, which is going to be a bummer, but like it's not a decision that surprises me, regardless of how torn I feel on the decision itself.
I just think to me it's a little confusing because this is an area where I think for years both of our games have not been treated equally, where July, so even though we always say like, oh, Worlds is in August and then after Worlds the new season begins, in reality the season is July from July to July, right? So like you always have NAIC in June or up to July 4th or whatever, and then after that you have locals and store tournaments and things in the TCG that count for championship points for the following season. So people were going into Yokohama with like 120 championship points already in the TCG from winning one of their store events or whatever. And I always think it's such a weird concept to me as a VG player because we have never been given access to that. Like how VG has always been ran is the end of US Nats or NAIC. After that, like you were not able to do anything for the next 6, 7, or 8 weeks. Like it was until Worlds was the next time you got to play the video game. And I hope that this system, and now that they're saying you can earn championship points starting July onward, like I hope that also includes VG. I'm not sure if it does.
Wait, like that they actually included that in the announcement that you can earn points for the next season starting July, or is that just going off of last year's kind of like precedent?
Well, that's just how it is for TCG every year. So they did say the new season begins in July. So for TCG, you can go to your local events and start earning your championship points beforehand, which is like it's a weird thing, but also if you don't have that, then there's like 2 months out of the year that you're not able to earn championship points, right? In June and July, so then you only have 10 months to. In August too, it's 3 months because there's no event in August besides the World Championship.
Yeah.
And then the regular regionals don't begin again until September. So, like, I think it's a weird thing that you can earn the CP in July for the following year, but like I think it is a nice thing, and I hope it eventually makes it over to the video game too, because I just don't understand why for so long we've had this like separate system.
I definitely think it should be even. I I don't know how much I like being able to earn points in July, like before Worlds, because that seems kind of redundant. I don't think having an off season, as long as it's not too long, is a bad thing for a game. Especially a game that, like Pokemon, there is players that are going to win a regional and earn their invite. There is also players that have attended events and are getting just like a handful of points each time, and that this whole journey is going to be a bit more of a grind. There's also people that are fighting for travel awards. And like I know they did take away day 2 for Worlds, but there is still the buy. You're still looking for like stipends and stuff to get to the World Championships. So it's a game that very much so encourages people to consistently keep going to events. With that, I don't think having an off season for like 2 months is a bad thing. I'm curious how that would actually work in terms of keeping the interest for the game for Worlds, whether it would be garnering like a bigger interest or whether it would diminish, because I think if it diminishes, that's obviously going to be a really bad thing. But I don't know how much I like, oh yeah, like get right back on the grind, start earning your championship points, because it is also punishing to those who are competing in the World Championships that year if they're having to worry about competing in locals for July as opposed to focusing on their Worlds run in August. I don't necessarily think that's healthy. I think it's more burnout than anything.
Yeah, I can understand where you're coming from, and I think for the longest time, the people that are like pro break before Worlds or post NAIC, like their argument is like the burnout and like you're now focusing on winning this League Cup instead of trying to prepare your deck for the best deck you can have for Worlds and stuff. But like I remember as a VGC player in the top region in New York, New Jersey, like those times after US Nats, like you couldn't have premier challenges. Like you were not allowed to hold events in the video game. So we had to I think a lot of times Liberty Garden would put on, like for fun events or tournaments and things just to keep the players in the region sharp. You know what I mean? And obviously those events would have much less turnout because there's nothing on the line. And I like maybe this could help, like for argument's sake, let's say the World Championship format, we do the same thing this year where, Regulation D, the first time we played it was at the World Championship. Well, if we can have locals and PCs and MSSs or whatever in July, and the World's format rotates in July, like then you do have about a month plus for whenever the dates for Hawaii get announced, if they ever get announced at this point. You do have a month of locals, of championship points, of people trying to play to win, to like build strong teams in that sense. So we're not going into Worlds blind. We're going in with somewhat of a metagame developed.
I just don't know necessarily how much of a metagame is necessarily derived from these locals, especially happening in July. Like it is very dependent on the stores holding them and the judges. It's not in Pokemon's grasp. Therefore, you might have a location like New York, because there is some TOs that work together. There was just 3 MSSs and a PC that happened in Indy last weekend. there is TOs that works together to deliver that, and that is then going to be a little bit more rounded out than a different region that's not having any events, or the TOs don't work together, they all overlap the event, which then I think doesn't actually necessarily help as much as it could. Like, I definitely don't like the going into Worlds with a brand new format that's never tested. I wasn't necessarily a big fan of that. I just don't know if, like, having the month of locals to test out that format is necessarily making it much better. Like, it's hard because I haven't competed in Worlds. I don't actually know. Maybe, like, the players that do compete, they'll be like, "No, it actually does help." Like, shut up. It's like, "Oh, you know what? Valid." Like, I definitely am not speaking from any experience here. I would just very much so be okay with there being somewhat of a break for July. The June one, I still don't know why we can't do events at least before NAIC and during NAIC, but it does make sense to hard cut it after, which they did do last year.
Yeah, that's just like their normal system is after NAFC, like the moment the stream cuts, like then everything is onward and upward to the World Championship. But like the season starting in July and TCG events like are having championship point events, like that's another reason that their world's threshold is higher than ours, right? Like when we were at, I think last year it was like 500 to 300, and this year now it's 600 to 500 instead. Like they do physically have an entire other month to earn championship points more than we do as VGC players. So
I think
like
more so the world's threshold's higher just because they have more players.
so yeah, that is a factor too. They have more players, so therefore they're giving out more CP, but they also do have a month more of events than we do. Like so that was why, you know, the same reason why last year when we started in January and they started in September, they had the 500 or 600 point, whatever it was for them, but ours was only 300 because we lost 5 months of events that didn't have VGC in it. So I'm just saying, like, it is. I guess you open up that can of worms if you are going to allow July CP events for the video game. Then are you going to raise the threshold for Worlds the next year? It's just, I don't know. I'm sure we can ask some of our TCG friends their opinions on if they like having to be on the grind in July or not, or if they should just be focusing on Worlds.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I do think that July events might kind of punish both player bases, because for those who do want a little bit of a break that aren't doing Worlds, you don't get one. And then for those that are doing Worlds and focusing on that, then, well, that's going to be a little tough, so.
Yeah, you're already behind on CP before the season even starts.
Yeah, which, it's like the same argument with, like, the Open, because I know the Open that happens at Worlds actually has quite a bit of chatter around it, because if you make day 2 of Worlds, you are now behind for the next season because you cannot compete in the Open because you're trying to bookend the previous
Well, yeah, okay,
season,
but the
right?
question is, why can't you compete, right? Because there's a chance you could be world champion. It's not like you can't compete because you're not allowed to. It's you can't compete because you're doing something more important. Like the people that complain when there's an MSS PC doubleheader and they're like, oh, why can't they wait to start the second one till after top 8? It's like, because you're in top 4 right now. You're already earning the championship points that the other people are trying to earn at this point. So you don't need to double dip. Like, it's okay for you not to be in the, I don't know if Hawaii's going to have it open, but the Honolulu Open, because you could potentially be world champion. I think that's a fair trade-off.
I like the fact that there's an Open.
I agree.
That in some years there was, because we didn't have one for Japan. I definitely wouldn't be opposed to it being like a day earlier, not on day 1, but like the day before, for everyone to compete in, because I actually think that would be quite interesting. But like, I don't know if I understand what you're saying with like the double dip. Don't get me wrong, I understand. It's just when there is so many points to be earned, and you are looking at things like the travel award snowball and stuff, because it is a snowball, right? Like, ultimately, if you're starting off well, that's how it goes. It just kind of sucks to be like, oh, well, you just kind of get punished a little bit for being good. Like, sucks to say, like, you know? But I really don't know a better way to do it either. So that kind of.
That's what I'm saying is I don't think I think it's like a glass half empty approach that a lot of top players have, saying that they're punished. But because you're not punished. You are potentially vying to be the world champion on day 2 when you're playing in the event. So you're not being punished for being good. Because you're good, you are now a part of an opportunity that the rest of these players do not have. Like, if I play in the Open, when I play in the DC Open or Nashville Open, I did not have a chance of becoming world champion. So, like, I was not rewarded for being bad. So how are you punished for being good? You get what I'm saying?
I mean, maybe you were rewarded for. I'm just kidding. But, real interesting question is, do we think there's going to be an Open in Honolulu?
I don't think so. I think you and I, we like the Open. A lot of, I don't know how TCG players feel about it, but a lot of video game players enjoy the Open. But I think Japan, it gave them the fresh start that they might have been looking for, like to have a Worlds without an Open, because it just is a huge headache. Like you said, just trying to register for the Open can be really stressful because there's a finite amount of slots, and it's like, people are like, man, I flew all the way to insert city and I wasn't even able to play in the Open. It was the only reason I came, so I could start getting some championship points. Like, so I start to snowball and everything. So it, like, for all the positives, I think the Open had, like, community building and like having everybody play together. And it wasn't only the World Championship caliber players got to play at the World Championships, right? All those positives, I think they might be outweighed by like the logistical negatives, especially if TCG gets an Open. I mean, by God, you could have, if there's no cap on the TCG Open in Honolulu, you could have 3,000 players wanting to
easily
want to play in that easily, right? So,
yeah.
Like, Japan might have been a blessing in disguise for them to just kind of to oust the Open.
I definitely don't disagree. I feel like, as much as I like the Open on a personal level, and I understand why others like it, I think we've gotten to a point where the game has grown too much for it to be reasonable. Because you're screwed either way. You can't get a bigger venue because it's the World Championships. You already have your venue booked, so you can't get a bigger venue. Those that are like, "Oh, get a bigger venue," like, keep in mind the whole point is for the World Championships, which they have a lot more control of the number over, because they directly do control that with the championship point bar.
Right.
Realistically, if they wanted more people to attend the World Championships, they'd lower the bar. If they want less, they raise the bar. So they got their venue figured out. Then all of a sudden, having an event that everybody can register to, well, they don't have a big enough venue. But I remember the last Open that I got to compete with, this was like before COVID, it was gone in 30 seconds. They had 2 waves and it was gone instantly. This was before COVID. It was TCG, but so it was bigger than VGC, but this was before the game grew to where it is now. So I think, as much as it sucks, I do agree that was kind of that was the hard out that Japan gave them, is like, hey, we already didn't have the Open. I do think they need to be transparent if they're not going to have an Open before people book flights and accommodation and everything.
I got bad news for you, Sierra. We don't even have Worlds dates, so I don't know if we're gonna get Open news.
Yeah, you know what? But that's fine. Nobody can book. But like, so first they need to release the Worlds dates. Second, like, just be upfront. Announce the Worlds dates and say whether there will or will not be an Open. I think the biggest criticism about Japan, which definitely made sense, is that they weren't upfront right away that there was or wasn't an Open. And my heart goes out for those who did book all this accommodation to then find out there wasn't one, right? But it sucks, but like, I understand it.
Yeah, I think we're on the same team here in this one. Like, in a perfect world, I would love for the Open to come back, because some of my favorite memories are from like those events, of like the friends I made, you know, being paired early rounds, and like seeing how like that was a way of me new in the community when I went to the World Championships in Boston. Like, I made friends from outside of my local scene that, you know, I could keep up with, and like, it has positives to it, but what has become is just going to be like a refresh competition on your computer to see if you can actually get in And then if you don't, then you have to sit there while all your other friends get to play in the open and you're just watching the stream and it doesn't feel fair, right? So the only fair thing would be that nobody plays in the open.
Yeah, because like that even already happened with EUIC, that people didn't get in when refreshing on frame 0, you know?
Right.
So it's not going to be any better with the open.
Speaking of Arcanine and everything else, we have a fun topic of conversation brought to us from Carlos, who he and his family run the Arcanine website and all the great services that they provide for the Pokemon community with registration and year round pairings, and like we kind of take Arcanine for granted for how great the service they provide for us compared to what we used to have in the past, having 600 people walk up to one piece of paper stapled onto a wall or whatever.
I don't really miss, but like
I do not miss
I remember NAIC writing my list out the morning of while standing in line. So I was one of those people.
Yeah,
that was
you just
a
write it
time.
on the back of somebody in front of you because the line's going to take so long.
Yep.
But so Carlos and Arcanine, they always do interesting conversations online and asking people for feedback and implement feedback and from the community and stuff. So they asked a pretty interesting question today as of recording, which was a lot of armchair tournament organizers out there. So let's gauge opinions. Bear in mind, if you're running this as a business and profit or loss matters each and every time. What do you consider a successful event? We have two options. One that sells out and one that has unsold seats. So you're the armchair tournament organizer, as Carlos puts it, and you're running this as a business trying to make a profit. What would you consider a successful event? One that sells out or one that has unopened or unsold seats?
I mean, if you're looking at it, like, I think it's pretty clear to see. If you're looking at it from an organizer perspective, you need all the seats to sell. I don't think there's ever a world where, as someone who's running the event, you're going to be like, man, I allotted for 2,000 people and only 1,400 showed up. This is a great day. Like, that's like, it doesn't make sense logistically, right? Like, it's absolutely sucks. And as a player and as a fan, like, seeing these events sell out so fast is disappointing, where I'd like bigger and bigger venues. And we have, like, I think people forget, we are getting bigger and bigger venues. We are getting higher and higher caps. It doesn't happen instantly, but it's unreasonable to think that they can book for a venue for 5,000 people to then only have 3,000 seats sell out. Like, venues are expensive. Chairs, they have to pay for chairs,
and tables.
Yeah, like they need the seats to realistically sell.
So this is actually pretty funny. It's one of those catch-22s. Like I was not a business major. I was a communication major. I'm not from some economic school or business degree. I had friends that were business majors and work in the business industry and stuff. So this question is like, it's a bit of a trick question. If you were in a business class and you were asked this question, it's different than our Pokemon answer. Because the answer to this question is that an event that sells out is unsuccessful because that means you could have charged more and you still would have had people buy it. So like that's why I said that's the trick question aspect to the business page. So an event that has unsold seats, let's say the cap is 2,000, but 1,800 seats are sold, is better than an event that caps out at 1,500, because that means you got 300 more purchases of the event, even though it was not sold out. You know what I'm saying?
Interesting.
So I don't know if that's what Carlos was going for. I just know from the general business practice, like that is the gotcha answer to it. And I think like it's tough because we have such different perspectives as a TO versus as players. Because some of there were some really interesting conversations in the comments that Carlos was replying to, and everything was civil. And he's always trying to see public perception and stuff. So it's really, really good that they have these open conversations for Arcanine. And some players brought up that like these events shouldn't be trying to be run at a profit, because it shouldn't be, you should like, their event was there is an entire circuit that goes from A to Z. So it shouldn't be that event F is trying to be run at a profit. The entire thing is supposed to make a profit. So I guess like one of the, like some of the people had, I don't know what your thought is on that point, Sierra, that the opinion wasn't that 12 different regionals should all be trying to have 12 profit margins. It should be 12 events should create one profit, if I'm explaining their position.
Yeah, the fundamental issue with that, so especially since I worked in like the grassroots scene for these organizers, and I have talked and sat with organizers about stuff, including even working other games for the organizer. Like, essentially the thing is don't not people notice that events are ran by different people?
Right.
Realistically, it should all be for a profit. Like, I don't necessarily disagree with that thought process. The issue is it's not one person running all 12 events. And so then it's each organizer has to make that profit for themselves, because they're not going to be profitable. And the only way to really then get around that, to then have it be, it's one profit through the year, is to have it all one organizer, or to have Pokemon take it over. There's only two answers, realistically. But I don't think people like when things like that are said, like I want more than anything for the events to be cheaper and have more people. Do not get me wrong. I want that. But like, look up the cost of a venue. Also, if you're going somewhere where it's a unionized city, you're not allowed to set up a single table by yourself. You have to have union workers do that. So every single one of those workers has to get paid. You have to pay for internet. You have to pay for everything. Someone has to plug in the internet. You know what you have to do? Pay them hella money to do that. There are so many different things that I don't think people really realize, that there has been events where organizers in the past have been worried that they're not going to get any profit. Well, they're putting all this work in because they're not getting paid except for what's coming out of the event, right? So that's where it gets difficult, because in a perfect world, yes, it would be ran by the same person to be a profit over the year, etc. But we don't live in that world, so I don't really know what the other solution would be.
Well, that is the thing. Is I think that's what most players would say is, yes, have Pokemon subsidize everything. That way, it is about the journey. It's about the entire way through, and then making it a profit at the end, instead of having 3 or 4 different organizers run 3 or 4 different events throughout throughout the year, and they have different rules, and the Pacific Northwest team has registration at 8 p.m. and everyone else has it at 8 a.m. before the event, and some organizers charge $68 and some organizers charge $73, and all these minute differences by virtue of having so many different organizers or so many businesses in this example, like that. I don't know if it gets solved, but at least some of those issues are lessened if Pokemon is just in charge of everything. Like, let's say Vince or Denise or another tournament organizer, if they just were a Pokemon employee, like for argument's sake, and they were the organized play tournament organizer or something like that, and their whole job was what they already do now, that's different than all these different companies trying to make a profit, because then the consumer and the company are on the same team. Pokemon and the player base are all trying on the same team, where right now you have individual organizers trying to make money and provide a good service. Obviously, they don't want to have a bad service, but like Pokemon wouldn't necessarily have to make the profit on running a regional if the regionals were ran in-house, because they have more money than God at this point.
But first off, a company doesn't just want to give up free money. I think
sure.
The understanding is that every esport is ran at a loss in terms of like a broadcasted in this tournament sense. The whole idea is that it creates advertising for the other parts of the game, and it just looks good on the brand. So for like that reason, and kind of looking at how like things on this tier in others, because like realistically, when we talk about events being ran by organizers other than Pokemon, it is regional. But when we get into internationals, that is more handled by Pokemon. We're talking about worlds, that is handled by Pokemon. And I think that actually mimics esports quite well. If you look at other like esports ecosystems, like lower events will be given out to these companies to then run that, and they're looking for their sponsors and they're doing individual things. But once you get into the higher tier events, that then is more covered by the companies, so they have a little bit more control about it. So I don't know necessarily like if it would be better for Pokemon to take up all of these things, because realistically, I'm looking at, well, they're going to be spending more money because they're now hiring somebody. It's going to be a way different way of things being done. And it could also mean that we're not going to get innovation on new things, that there's not going to be things pushed. We might get less events because of it. And none of that really solves the biggest issue of where all of this stems from. We just don't have enough seats for events. It doesn't solve any of that, and I don't actually think it would ever solve any of that. I actually just think the issue like gets worse.
Yeah, but I think the issue of like profit is it's never going to be, even if it's ran by Pokemon or TO or anybody, it's never going to be solvable, because they're no matter how much or how little they spend, this circuit inherently will not make money. They will be spending more than they get out of it off of tournament entry fees, because this is all essentially marketing for Pokemon, right? We are marketing Scarlet and Violet, we're marketing DLC 1, we're marketing DLC 2, we're marketing Temple
We're
of
marketing
Fates.
Pokemon cards. That's the biggest one.
Exactly, right. I think Temple of Fates is the newest set or something like that, right? Like, so we're marketing the new cards. Look at this new Charizard. Look at this new Great Tusk. Look at this new Iron Bundle. Like, so this whole, our fun and our community exists to market Pokemon. We're trying to be competitive, and we're trying to have fun, and we're trying to make it entertaining for the broadcasts and for the viewers and stuff. But in reality, we are here to show everybody to go buy Pokemon, to go buy a Miraidon plush, you know? And so, like, that's why if we're only trying to make a profit on Pokemon's end, well, then that's not going to happen, because it's not welcome to LAIC sponsored by Monster. Like, we don't have that, so you can't make a product, you can't make a profit, because you don't have sponsorships, you don't have all these other things that would give you don't have an ad break from Butterfingers, you know? Like, it's like all of these things are issues.
First of all, I'm just thinking about like the advertisement Monster. I'm just that cracks me up. There is realistically a cost loss that a company cannot just justify. Giving it out to a different organizer, there's then incentive for them to be making money, whether it is with entry fees, the amount of seats they're selling, the biggest thing, prize wall inside events. That's where a lot of the money comes from. But all of that, like, there is an incentive for the organizer to then run the event, so Pokemon doesn't have to worry about it. You know, the events run well, they're doing their own thing. They're not paying this person, probably. Then this person is then going to look at more and more ways to be turning a profit on the event and making it bigger and better, so that they can get a profit out of it. So Pokemon's now not having to worry about it, and they're not losing as much money as if Pokemon did take it under their wing. So I just like, even from that end, I do think it is a really funny world to talk about Pokemon taking sponsors one day. Like that, that I think is a funny conversation in itself, you know, but it's just, I don't know. I'd be very curious if they ever did take more control, because like, we're having the conversation. There would have been a time where years and years back, like if we had this podcast, it could have been a conversation the same about their broadcast and their streaming, you know, which now Pokemon does have control of. So it would be interesting to see if that ever changes. There's so many different things to it.
Yeah, I think like conversations, that's why I, brought it up on the show today, because I thought the thread was really interesting, like hearing other just players' opinions versus other tournament organizers that replied to Carlos, and then his responses. Like, I thought the whole conversation was really interesting. Like, there's one person that says, if you sell out, you failed as an organizer but succeeded as a business, because you still made the money as their thought. Like, yes, you failed because you could have prepared for more slots or whatever, but like then again, if we get into the nitty gritty and like it depends and stuff, like let's say you have a lemonade stand. Sierra has made us a lemonade stand, and like, what's the better business? Like your lemonade stand that sells $500 cups of lemonade, or sells $500 cups of lemonade. Like, what's the better business? Like, they both made $500, right? But you served more as the dollar, at the dollar level. So it's like trying to, which is why the TOs now, we went from $30 to $40 to $50 to $60 to $65 to $67 to $68.39 to $71.50, because they're trying to find that middle ground of how much can we increase the cost of lemonade per cup before people stop buying the lemonade.
Well, I actually don't even think like that is like the biggest issue. I think it is part and due to like everything costs more nowadays except for how much we're making. And I think that's just an unfortunate byproduct of it, because venues are costing more, all the unions are costing more, like all the costs that they have sprinkled in, everything is more and more and more. And if realistically, if the events are getting bigger, they're not doing them in the same halls that they used to have. So if you are renting out bigger venues to have more people, sometimes there's going to be a bigger cost associated with that, to where they do need to up it for that. So I don't necessarily know if like, I'd be curious to talk to organizers nowadays to know kind of about where their profit margin lies, because I think that's a really interesting conversation in itself. I don't think the increase though is kind of testing that. I think it is just a look at the events that we're getting. Like Vancouver 2018, I think it was like in a school gym. You know, like we did not have many people, and it was at a school gym. So that is going to be less cost than where we are, which is still one of the smaller halls, but in the Vancouver Convention Center on the water, which is a beautiful convention center, right? Like, and if we're going to get one of the bigger halls, because there is bigger halls there, that is then also going to be more money. So all these other things that people ask for, like more seats, they do need to be asking for more and more money to accommodate for that.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you went from the high school gym for $30 entry fee to now it's $70 at the convention center.
Yeah, and like it goes, we had this conversation a couple weeks back, but it's so great that the game is growing, but like, dang, is there so many issues linked in with the growth of the game, just because you can no longer have as many people and all this other stuff.
It's a bummer.
Yeah. we have been like 30-40 minutes into this, and we've just been talking about the Twitter post and not any of our questions.
Yeah, that's the reason everyone's here.
I think it's crazy.
I don't even know if they knew when we posted in the Discord, because usually we'll always post like before we start recording, like, anyone have a question? And little did they know that we weren't looking for a question. We were looking for many, and now we can just spend all the time in the world answering.
So we'd love to know everybody else's thoughts about the organizer thing, because I think it's very much so a question without an answer. It is like,
I agree.
It's tough. We can have our different opinions, but I don't actually think there is one answer to that. But that's something we could talk about forever and get absolutely nowhere with. Our first question, though, getting into all these different questions, because I love these questions. I do want to answer them. First one, Flame G. Do you think events like Utrecht, where a weird team wins, helps grow the game more than a big regional, biggest that we've had, like Charlotte? So for context, Utrecht was won by this super unique snow team. Whereas Charlotte was won by a very just normal meta team.
Conventional.
Just very conventional team. Yeah. I think this is interesting. I think using the example, big regional like Charlotte, hurts the question a little bit, because I do think the fact that Wolf won Charlotte kind of changes the context of things a little bit. So I feel like you would just have to say like a big regional that won with a conventional team. That wasn't won by Wolflick, because I think Wolflick winning an event always helps the game.
Yeah, because I mean, you can make the argument, yeah, Wolf won with Charlotte, and then what happened the next week? One of his patrons got the paste and won Liverpool, right? So like that influenced the meta, because they started running what Wolf was running. But yeah, I would say probably the Utrecht side of it, like the Articuno side, probably influences more. I don't know what your thoughts are going to be on this, but we think about like how a new regulation starts, Regulation E, and everybody's running Ogrepon Hearthflame, and then like there's one, Tommy Tor that suddenly Cornerstone Mask wins it, and then now that's a real threat in the metagame. Or like nobody was running Gouging Fire at first; it was all Raging Bolt and Walking Lake and regular Entei and all these things, and then there's some big regional where Gouging Fire comes in second or something like that, and then now that's a legitimate threat, and like Joe Garte is running it at events and things now. So I think, or like, what was the example that Justin Karras used? I think it was like the Blood Moon Ursaluna came out of nowhere from right before Charlotte.
Was like all that like spam stuff that was happening on Limitless Tours.
It was like Limitless Tours where like it was nowhere, and then it was 5 of the top 8 teams in the event. So I would say the like more unconventional teams probably influence the meta more than the larger events with a conventional team. But like, I don't know, it could be tough.
See, I think when you're looking at like the growth of the game, because realistically the growth of the game, you're looking for people who aren't quite as serious about the game to get into the game and have some sort of interest in the game. So I think there's a couple of different ways where that interest is invested. One of them being with a weird team winning, because it's very much so, and we've talked about it too, like good, like solid, usual, normal, boring picks. You got your Water Pawn, your Flutter Mane, etc., versus things that are a little bit more unconventional. It's like the unconventional isn't always good, but that is the more interesting part of all of it, and what people, especially who don't know much about the game, are invested into, because they like to see the quirky, weird things win. If you're looking for something that's appealing to a little bit more of a casual audience, a weird team winning is always going to do that. And then it's not only, this weird team was used, but you can win with a team that's a little bit off the wall. So that's a little bit more incentive for people to try these unconventional things, get into the game a little bit more. I think, like I said, Charlotte, I think, was a tough example, because I do think the other way that the game has grown is by having a big public figure do well in an event. Wolf being the biggest public VGC figure that can really win an event like this. So him winning an event, I think, is also just going to be extremely influential for the game. I think if it was someone else winning with a conventional team, it doesn't really do much to help the game. And if anything, I think just reinforces people's attitudes of VGC is so boring. Finger quotes for those Spotify, Apple podcast listeners, but VGC is so boring because you can't use cool things. So yeah, Wolf and Articuno winning, I think, is both good if you're looking at the growth of the game and bringing new people in.
I like that you included the Apple podcast listeners, because sometimes you don't.
Am I allowed to say that I don't like Apple Podcasts, like on Apple Podcasts? Like, am I going to get in trouble for it? Do they just like detect
They're not
that
listening.
Like,
you're good.
No. Okay, here is my 30-second rant about Apple Podcasts. All right.
Okay.
Spotify literally instantly like uploads the thing and is like, okay, you can now upload instantly. YouTube, it takes a little bit of time, but there's a progress bar. Apple Podcasts is like, come back in 30 minutes to 5 hours and maybe we'll have uploaded your audio. It's audio only. You're telling me Spotify does this in 30 seconds and you don't even give me a time estimate. You're like, minimum 30 minutes. It'll never do it automatically. It is more so along the 5 hours mark. So if I'm waking up 3 hours before the podcast should go up, it might not go up in time. And then I actually have to, it doesn't even just like set it. So once the audio is uploaded, it'll upload all of it. It then goes into draft stage. So then I have to go back and remember, oh wait, this didn't upload because it hates me. And now I have to go up and upload it again, which I'm forgetful. I forget to do that sometimes. And there is sometimes as well, which this is my favorite, where I upload the audio, let it sit for a while, let it marinate, come back, and it's just decided it didn't want to work. So then it's like, all right, cool. I uploaded, I remembered to come back, and now it's gone, and I have to start from step 1 again. Which means then I have to have a second time remember to come back. It's terrible. I'm not a fan of Apple Podcasts.
It's brutal.
It's dreadful. It is dreadful. So Apple Podcast listeners out there, I'll continue to try my best for you because I appreciate you listening, but man, do I hate Apple Podcasts.
It's always just funny to me because people always tag me and say not on Apple Podcasts yet. So it's like, okay, so Sierra runs the Twitter and Instagram and our YouTube and our everything, but we're just gonna deviate one thing, and we're gonna put Joe in charge of Apple Podcasts for like in that person's head. It happens all. It's just really funny when they tag me thinking I didn't upload it. It's like, don't you think if Sierra hit send on every other uploaded version of it, don't you think she also hit send on Apple too?
I can understand that they don't always know who's uploads the thing. It is funny that it does default to you though, because like there's no necessary like reason why it should be defaulted to you, but it is funny that like every time it is defaulted, they're just like, this seems like a Joe issue. They just like pass it along to
Classic
you.
Joe not uploading to Apple Podcasts.
Classic Joe Brown didn't upload the Apple Podcast again. I'll never correct them because like
Yeah.
I'm not underneath. But yeah, that is the Apple Podcast conundrum for anyone out there who's like, I like to listen to an Apple Podcast and sometimes I can't. You now know why. You know the issue. Oh, also, it is the only platform that I cannot turn off two-factor authentication. And I do not live in a place with good service. So like last week's episode, I forgot to pay my phone bill. So it wouldn't even let me log into the account until I had paid the phone bill, which took a few days because, the economy. So I couldn't even upload an episode. So it's very dumb. It's very dumb.
Brutal.
Yeah, that is it. All right. Next question. All right, we talked about Utrecht. We talked about the weird teams helping the game grow. Wolflick helping the game grow. Next question coming out from Geb. What do you think is the best indicator of a metagame being healthy? What do you define as a healthy metagame? This, I think, is very interesting because this is definitely one where I could see people having extremely different opinions based on what they like out of the game.
Yeah, for sure. This is like, if you asked 15 different people, you might get 10 different answers. Like maybe a couple people agree, but this is such a varied topic. Also for you Apple Podcast listeners, she did do the air quotes again on healthy, just lets you know. Just watch on YouTube and you see it, but it is what it is. But
it's always uploaded on time.
That's what I was saying. YouTube is great. But so I guess I would, if you were to ask me, compared to, let's say, someone who's constantly in the day 2 race and, some of the guests we've had on and always performing well using conventional Pokemon, I think a format is healthy when there are various strategies and Pokemon that are viable at performing well and at winning an event. So I'm not saying there needs to be 50 viable Pokemon to make a format healthy, because sometimes that can actually be very difficult because it's too many things to take care of. Like my example would be, I guess we called it Series 1 at the time, but if we retroactively call it Regulation A, the first event of Scarlet, or first format of Scarlet and Violet, I don't think was very healthy. I think people have some rose-tinted lenses because it was the first event of the new generation and everything. But there were a lot of nonsense strategies that you were able to get away with in that format with Garganacl and Dondozo and Murkrow and the Terra Roulette on Hydreigon and all the different things. Yeah. So where I would say something that could be healthy was Regulation C, where even if the Pokemon were more boring and they were more centralized around it, there were still there was a Palafin balance team. There's a Ting Lu Stalls, kind of balanced team. There's more hyper offensive Torkoal, King Gambit, try to like those Joyo X9, those Luca Tragut style teams. There were Pelipper Azumarill teams doing well. Like I think Regulation C, even if there were less viable Pokemon, there were more varied strategies. And then we saw at the end of NAIC, it was solo Dondozo ended up winning the whole thing. So it's, for me, it's not the Pokemon count. Right. It's not the Pokemon count that makes something healthy. It's the amount of viable strategies.
Yeah, I think there is a very specific middle ground when you're looking at what creates a healthy metagame. Because if there's too little options, I don't think that's healthy. If it's like, if you're not playing one of these two things, you're going to lose. I don't think that's healthy. But I think where I start to disagree with people that are like, I want to use more quirky Pokemon. I want to use these weird things. I want to see these bad Pokemon be better so that you could use more Pokemon. I think the flaw in that is I think too many viable teams is actually an indication of a worse metagame. Because realistically, oh, it's a crapshoot. It's literally just matchup roulette. If you can go to an event and your team is okay, it's 50-50 against this team, it's 0-100 against this, 30-70 here, 40-0 here, against 30 different matchups. That's just random at that point. I think that's does not actually a real indication of like a skill with the specific team, and I don't think it's a healthy metagame. I think when you have like 10 or so different things, realistically there needs to be some level of like rock paper scissors. And like rock paper like okay, like you could be pretty good against 70% of these matchups. Take your 15% bad matchups, your 15% good matchups. And I think having like 10 or something is like fine, you know? I think that's on a higher end of things, but I think like the more things that are viable, the worse it is. Like I don't know. I don't want to bring a team to an event and being like, "Cool. There is about 40 different used archetypes that I could play at any point." Not including the people that go off meta. So then there's another 20 different archetypes. So there's 60 different things I could play. My 9 rounds of Swiss. That's no longer fun.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, you might as well go play TCG, where you can play Charizard and just hope you don't hit grass decks, or play Mew and hope you don't hit dark decks, right? Like, that's essentially how the TCG players play it, right? Some of the top players are like, we're just going to accept that 6% of the metagame is Chien Pao, and this deck loses to Chien Pao, so we hope we don't run into those 6% of players. Like, at that point, you're not even trying to build a well-rounded deck or well-rounded team. You're just trying to hope that the RNG hammer doesn't hurt you there.
I don't agree with like no, I think we have that in VGC. If you look, like there's always like the gatekeeper teams that you then have to make sure you're okay past, but you can't actually prep for them all. You need to be okay and decide like the gatekeeper teams, size spam, trick room, like at the most basic
Sure.
form. Trick room has gotten better, so I think that is a little bit more viable than just a gatekeeper.
Dozo.
Dozo, yes, that's the one I was forgetting. And you can't actually realistically prep for all of them. Amoonga spam, a bunch of different things. So there is always going to be one where you're just like, especially to the size spam and Dozo, like there, if you're balanced against everything else, I think it could be quite difficult sometimes to be good against both of those things. So one of them you have to be like, all right, which matchup am I going to give a little bit more in? And just take it. Like I do actually think that we're on the same par with TCG in that course.
But I think what's different, like, I guess to me in that conversation is like, you can't, like, just the nature of how TCG works. No matter what you do, that Chien Pao matchup or that Miraidon matchup or Charizard matchup, like, depending on how your deck operates, you're just not going to win that matchup, right? So sometimes it is more optimal to just accept that you will lose to Chien Pao and you'll only face one in your 14 rounds or whatever. Where in VGC, ideally, you can't just accept that you lose to size spam. You can say it's not favorable, but I have to have a size spam answer. I have to have a Dondozo answer. Palafin was the strongest Pokemon on the planet, and it was running Haze in its 4th slot just in case for the Dondozo matchup, right? Where that was something that, like, you can't just accept that you lose to a certain matchup in VGC the way that you can in the trading card game.
I think you can to an extent. I think the difference comes out with play. Because I have had people talk to me about their 90-10 matchups. So, like, you should not be winning this matchup, but they've outplayed, because I think VGC kind of lends itself to have a little bit more of that than the TCG does.
Sure.
Like, the TCG, if you're against a bad matchup, kind of cooked.
Yeah.
I think for the most part, you're kind of done. Like, maybe like the Tords of the world can play themselves out of it, but beyond that, I think you're kind of just done. Whereas, like VGC, like having a Gastrodon sit in front of a Grassy Glide Brilla with grassy terrain and just being so cracked that 3 turns in a row you're going to go for Ice Beam and they're going to call you to be Terry or protecting every time and you don't do it. Like, there is going to be outplay or different like roads you can go down to where it's a little bit more forgiving, air quotes yet again, that you are running something that doesn't necessarily have an answer, because you always do have the potential of just outplaying them. So where it's never a 0-100 matchup. It will only ever be like 90-10.
Yeah, I think even the 90-10 exaggerated sometimes from our player base. I know 90-10 seems like, oh, what are you running not fully evolved Pokemon? Like, for it to be 90-10, are you running Oinkoloin? Like, come on, like, it's not 90-10.
I think like that's like considering both players are playing optimally the entire time, because like for like examples to where like there is the outplay, you outplayed one person played optimally and the other didn't. Sometimes maybe RNG might switch that up, with critical hits, double protects, triples, whatever. But like realistically, if somebody is winning an unfavorable matchup, they outplayed and the other underplayed. And I think it's the same thing. But realistically, if both players play optimally, then like there can't be 90-10s. The person should win every single time.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
I think that's just like a agree to disagree. Maybe it's also I came more from a TCG background into this, so I'm like, wow, you can have a trash matchup and you can win. This is insane. You can't do this in TCG, really. Like, it could just be a little bit of difference in that, too. But
let's go on to our next question. I'll read this
we're
one.
doing a really bad job getting through these questions.
We'll get there. Everybody's enjoying it, you know? So this one's from Fendi. What is your favorite story that you've witnessed / casted in your VGC career? So the way I'm reading this question is, I imagine like you at the desk, like following a story through an event, or you physically casting a specific man. Like, that's how I don't know if that's how you're reading this question, but that's how I'm reading it.
That's how I'm reading it. I think I have my answers. Do you?
Yeah.
Okay. Who's going first? You can go first. I literally was like going on forever about the last one. Yeah, you go first.
I think this was pretty clear for me, and for anybody who's known me for long enough. I think my favorite match I've ever been a part of, or I had the honor of witnessing, was my president, Sir Justin Burns, beating a Kyogre with a Toxicroak and winning the first event in a decade for Toxicroak at Philadelphia Regionals 2019. Philadelphia Regionals, by the way, 45 minutes outside of Philadelphia. We're not gonna harp on that 5 years later, although I'm still upset about it. But yeah, Toxicroak winning a regional and being there in the moment, dodging a thunder, getting the low roll into the high roll for the win. Just every single thing about that. Like, I'll be 90 years old and I'll still be texting Brendan, my co-caster, like, bro, remember that Toxicroak? And we'll never forget it.
Oh my goodness, that's a good moment though. I should have been able to guess that too, honestly. Like, it's your president. It's your president. You gotta say that, right? I think it's hard. I think there's a couple of different moments that I want to say. I feel like there is recency bias with a couple of them. But I do actually think that there has been really, really good stories coming out to where that's quite interesting. I do really like Wolf's Charlotte win. Not even more so from Wolf's perspective of it, but the back and forth between him and his opponent. I think was really, really cool. Nicholas had faced off against Wolf day 1, day 2, and then in finals. And he was undefeated the entire way. And the only person he lost to was Wolf. And then they took it to a game 3 in the finals. And like I like Wolf, like we're friends. Like, I'm glad he won. I think from a story perspective, if Nicholas had won, it would have been like, oh my god, the most insane VGC story.
It was his first ever day 2, right?
It was his first ever day 2.
And he would have beat the best player, yeah.
Yeah. Which would have been like, that would have made the story like a little bit, oh my god. But even just Wolf, disappeared for months, comes back, wins an event, the biggest event, was also an insane storyline. So it was like 2 really, really cool storylines that you're both rooting for at the same time. Tang winning his first regional that he ever attended was super, super cool. And then 2 regionals later, also winning. I think that was absolutely incredible, because it was like, you had all the hype and excitement from the first time he won the event, but now it was like the constant, what if? Can he do it again? Is he doing it again? And I just thought that was so cool. And then one that's not as recent. I won't only do recent examples. Renzo Navarro. For Players Cup 4. got knocked into the losers bracket right out the gate, and I think he actually had a game loss game 1. So if he lost that next game, he was cooked. He was done. And he proceeded to 2-0, so technically 2-1, and then win his way through that lower bracket to then get the bracket reset and win Players Cup 4, which was incredible. The finals was a little bit rough because they were like very similar teams, and it was like, all right, now we're going to Dynamax to Landorus for a max Airstream because if you don't, you lose. And so both players were doing that. So that one wasn't as much fun, but like that whole story, I think that was just incredible. Like to just be that, you always talk about the lower bracket, like, oh, tournament life on the line, haha, the cliche. But getting a game loss, I'm pretty sure it was a game loss. And like you lose one game, you're out, and then managing to win the tournament, I think was incredible.
That's a good answer. I was jokingly going to say Players Cup 3 for you since it was your first event, just to as your answer. But Players Cup 4 was pretty cool. I was there for that one. So
I don't remember anything about Players Cup 3. I was so nervous the entire time. I was visibly shaking. They wouldn't let me do any of the tosses. I wouldn't have wanted to anyways, because I was sitting there like the entire time. I was so scared. I don't remember anything about that Players Cup.
Players Cup 4. That was the one to be a part of,
Yeah. 100%.
So I just like remember because Gabby beat me in the 2 caster battles we had, and you guys were just all over me. Like, oh my god, he's got we did a generation battle. So I was Gen 7 and she was Gen 3. So it was Alola versus Hoenn, and I just like didn't think about Metagross, and I just had like 4 Pokemon weak to Max Quake, Max Steel Spike, Metagross. Like, and I was just, like, it just wasn't even games, and you and Daz were you guys were all over me. I was like, God, I wasn't thinking, guys. I was trying to have fun.
I mean, Metagross is kind of everywhere, so that one goes kind of on you.
I don't know why I had a brain fart in the Players Cup, but I did.
Rip. All right. Next one. Next question that we have, because I'll try and be a little bit better about sticking to the questions that we have, because that was the whole name of the episode. This one, from Moggy. We're actually getting into current day event stuff. What would be your favorite side quests around any event? Meaning, what were some of the standout venues, like nearby arcades, escape room, bars, amusement parks, etc., that everyone should check out if they have time? It's like favorite stuff to do around.
So this is tough now that we're no longer in Columbus, but Sierra and I bonded over our time in Columbus at the esports bar. That was like, remember when we went last year, going to Columbus, one of our most exciting things were like, and we get to go back to the esports bar. Now I ended up not being able to go one of the nights when the other players did, but like going to Columbus was like, let's have fun at NASC, but also let's go to this esports bar that like, let's make it a thing that we go here now. So like, trying to think if there's anything. The only thing I can think that holds up to that, because I've been to Hartford so many times, which we know how Hartford is, but the one barbecue restaurant that we went to in Hartford last year, like that was the thing that we would always get every single time there was a Hartford.
So many times.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
so like
that was good.
I think I'd probably, if Hartford, I'd be sad if it ever comes back because, it's a tough city. But if it does come back, I'll also be happy because then we can go to that barbecue joint again.
No, that was really good. Yeah, that esports bar too, like for context, because Sunday night, there was not a soul there. So like, I went with a couple of people because we're just trying to scope out spots. And then we're like, wow, there is nobody at this esports bar. Wait a second, this could actually be pretty dope. So then we invited everyone over, and at first it was just kind of like we had like 10 people there kind of awkwardly standing around, rented out a couple switches, a couple more people rolled up, and everyone like, okay. And then like by the end of the day, it was just like that's where like all the VGC people were, like the place was hopping. It was so much fun. That was absolutely great.
That was the legend of Aaron Karthistron Zhang, where we were playing League on the computers, and we found out that Aaron Zhang has 1.5 million mastery on Karthus in League of Legends. Like that was like I've never literally to this day, that was 2 years ago, like every time I've seen a Karthus in League of Legends, I have thought of Aaron Zhang ever since that moment.
No, that was honestly, I was really bummed that like it didn't end up happening, that everyone went back last year, because that was That was absolutely amazing. Oh, I forgot. Oh, there was not Texas last year, but the year before that, I think it was Arlington. It was only a TCG event, so there was no VGC people, but having done TCG, I casted this event. There was like nothing near the venue. It was very much so like you had to Uber places, you're walking 20 minutes out in December. And there ended up being this place that had this barbecue place. So okay, we go for barbecue. We're kind of hanging around there, walking around. It turned out to be like this big venue, and like there was this big middle area with like raised seatings where you could sit down, get food or like drinks or whatever. And they had live music there. When they didn't have live music, they had like a football game on, and it was just a very interesting vibe. It was a lot of fun. Like that was a good time. Um, I think like favorite like other side quests of doing like for an event. Escape rooms are kind of like sometimes because you are kind of like that is like what you do. But every escape room that I've done with BGC people, I think has been super super fun. Karaoke.
I was gonna say, what about Portland for you?
Yeah, you can only do karaoke on a Sunday. That is the only you're not allowed to do karaoke on any other night as a broadcast talent because you will destroy your voice. But karaoke is so much fun. What else? I don't know, like if I think the most important part, I think you'd agree with me here. I think it's the company.
For sure.
But it is definitely really, really good. Was it in Portland where there was the mini golf place? I could think it was the mini golf place in Portland gone 2 years in a row, but there is like this really interesting mini golf place that I've gone back to with people.
Interesting. No, I didn't go mini golfing.
No, you didn't. It went with group of players.
Okay.
But I think it was Portland.
We also have a second question from Magi on the episode this week. Besides the obvious Pokemon and Friends, are there any regional/worlds or even PC/MSS locations that you look forward to because it has restaurants or areas you really love? Oof, this is good because like I don't go to many locals anymore, so like it's obviously different. Like back in the day, my favorite local that we had was at Target, the only game in town. I think that closed down actually. I was down. It was about like half hour for me in Jersey. And they had a great I don't know if it was Japanese or not, but it was an Asian restaurant that had just like really, really excellent food that was right across the street. So every time we went down to Target, my brother and I, if we were playing, like when we were done, we would go to that restaurant before we left.
It sounds like he keeps saying Target.
No, TOGIT, the only game in town. There was
like a moment of like
I'm like a Boston person saying Target. Yeah.
I will say, for PC MSS location, there is this place down in Seattle. I forget what the name of it was, but they were literally hosting their locals in this. It was like a restaurant attached with like a board game place. So it was like a whole board game store, and they actually had different rooms that people could rent out to go do board games. And it was a huge store. There was every board game. And then they had a restaurant attached that you could play board games in like while you ate. And it was such a cool location because there was just so much there. We unfortunately didn't eat there after just because the tables had filled up. We should have figured that a little beforehand. But the vibe of it was very, very cool to where I'd definitely be down for more of that. Regional worlds or other locations that you look forward to. I mean, go back to the controversial, like, I didn't dislike Columbus. I did not dislike Columbus.
Yeah, there was a lot going on
there was
in
escape
Columbus.
rooms, there was that esports bar, there's Raising Cane's, like, everything was close by. Like,
there was that pizza place open till like 3 a.m. right across from the venue.
Mikey's Late Night Slice. Like, yeah, it was nearby. So, like, you could just walk from your hotel and get a slice of pizza at any hour. Like, my biggest thing is I like things being nearby and walkable. If I do not have to go into an Uber, except for when I'm coming to or from the airport, I'm content. Like, I love that. There's stuff to do. Amazing. Like, that's about it, you know?
Yeah, I'm definitely with you. And it's tough with like a Worlds location to look forward to, because Worlds is in a different spot every year, right? So unless you went to like 2014 DC and 2019 DC and like there was a restaurant or something you looked forward to seeing, it's kind of tough at the Worlds level, because we're going there anyway, right? Like we're going to London when you and I went to London, like, and we got to do stuff in the downtime. It's not like we were going to London to go to this bar. Like we went to this bar because we were already in London, you know?
London, yeah. No, 100%. I will say, like, I think, like, it is very interesting when we get, like, unique Worlds locations. Obviously, Japan was special for a lot of reasons, being, like, kind of the game started and all that. But it was also really, really cool because there was a lot of places nearby that was walkable. You got to experience something different, which I really appreciated for that. I'd be curious to see how Hawaii ends up being, but it's as long as it falls in the same criteria as like the others, like, okay, there's stuff that you can do with friends in the area. That's the biggest thing for me for a location.
Yeah, for sure. And we try to make the best of it. If any of our, I'm just thinking on London, like if any of our EU friends like Lee or Lou, like there was that bar kind of lunch place that we went to right outside the Excel Center where we had all the casters at, if you remember that one.
Where Dawes had to order for us.
Yeah, because... it was like 16 of us there. That was a really fun experience. And then Lee and Dawes took me to Spoons one night, which was apparently like a big deal. I'm sure our British listeners know what it is, but like it was a happening place. Me and Jake were vibing in Spoons, so it was good.
My biggest issue with London Worlds was like, for a lot of places, if you didn't want just like pub food, like you did have to Uber. Like we kept Ubering like kind of across the water, and it that doesn't make like a fun experience. I love that Pokemon people are taking over. Like you walk down the street from the venue and you look at every single table and like you're like, oh, I recognize a good chunk of these people, and those who I don't recognize are wearing Pokemon shirts. So I know they're involved. I love that kind of atmosphere. So I didn't get that from the London World, but Japan was a little bit different.
And then we have a follow-up on like kind of cities and regionals and everything from Hannah. Her question: what's a state/city/whatever that isn't on the current regional circuit that you would love to see added? So Hannah usually comes up with questions a lot for question of the week as well. So for me, I think it's the obvious answer of literally any state in the Northeast, like any of them. There is no reason we don't have a Northeast regional. Put it in Jersey, put it in New York, put it in Connecticut, put it in Boston. Maybe don't put it in like New Hampshire or something like that. But like it is criminal that one of the highest populated regions in the country does not have an American regional. I'm not counting about Toronto. Toronto's going over a border and everything like that. So yeah, somewhere in the Northeast.
I think a city that would be super, super cool would actually just be New York.
Oh,
not for the same reason.
Die if we ever got a New York regional.
Yeah, not for the reason that you listed, but I think just like when we're talking about things that are like everything's nearby and there's stuff to do, like New York would be super cool for that. Also, Garte lives in New York, so like I've been, and every single time, like I love it. You can take the train anywhere, the subway anywhere. There's always a million things to do. The amount of Instagram pins that I have of places that I want to go, like it isn't short of anything. So I think that would be really, really cool for those reasons. I'm trying to think of somewhere else.
I miss Milwaukee. I'm just gonna say it. I really liked Milwaukee. It was so much fun.
I missed Madison Regionals before it turned into Milwaukee. Madison Regionals was amazing, but
so I guess
we kind of got too big for the venue.
That's another answer. Go back to Wisconsin in some capacity.
I didn't go to Milwaukee, so I can't say for that. So I'm sticking my answer to just Madison. I also liked it when not for travel reasons, but instead of our now Florida location, I liked Daytona.
You liked Daytona?
That was right. Daytona was right by the water.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Dude, I walk out from the venue and I walk my butt to the beach. That was amazing. That was so cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that's like going into like, okay, like Canada snow, etc. But like, I don't go to hot, sunny places often. Like, I don't get to experience that. So it was like the coolest thing for me that like I left the venue and me and my friend just walked to the beach. I went and just walked into the water. I was like, yo, I am on a Florida beach, just standing here. Like, what is this? Like, it was just a really, really cool like area. Like, it was a cool vibe. I can understand why people wouldn't want to go back there, but like, I'm just thinking of that experience by itself in a bubble, and that was cool.
Daytona's certainly something, Sierra. I'm not gonna disagree with you, but I very much am happy we have Orlando back. That's all I'll say.
No, that was my experience with it. I will say too, San Diego regionals. I mean, we've been there, but we only did it the once. Amazing, phenomenal.
It was
Please
so
bring
good.
it back. That was so good.
There's no reason not to have San Diego every year. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, like that was like one of the like best ones. And oh my god, there was the breakfast place nearby. It was so good. It was so good. Yeah. But yeah. That's there's been some good locations.
There's some good, yeah. And while we're at it, why don't we put Peoria in Chicago? Thank you.
Chicago would be like straight Chicago.
Can we not have to, go to a 6 terminal or a 6 plane regional location anymore?
Back to the Peoria airport
the fire. Yeah.
Fire in the airport. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
I do think that like having regionals in bigger cities, like where you can actually just fly straight into and not have to worry about like, oh, there's this 1-a-day transfer. Yeah. That would be my biggest thing overall that I would like change, even if the location isn't necessarily the best in terms of like, oh, there isn't as much to do or etc. Like, I do think that the travel for a good portion of people is like the biggest priority overall.
Yeah, I'd also Knoxville is fun and all, but that's another small airport that tough to fly into. I would love a Nashville regional. I think we have the numbers. We could maybe, I don't know if logistically it would work out, but I would love to go back to Nashville.
Nashville is cool. They had good food there. They had good food there. I will say. All right, next question. In terms of traveling to events, in your opinion, this is from Split Second. In your opinion, when going to events regionals, is it better to pay a little extra to stay in a decent hotel or go the Airbnb route? This is an interesting question because I do think it is very tailored to who you talk to.
Yeah.
Because that is the biggest thing. I have done both of these options before. I will say, like, if you have the money, staying near the venue, walking distance is going to be the best every single time. Yep. Like, there's nothing you don't want to be having to do a 20-minute Uber or like a 30-minute walk the morning of the event when there's so many other things to do. If you don't have the money, like, that's a different story. But like, if we're talking perfect world, you have the money to do either option. Yeah, just wherever near the venue, always the best.
You just there's gonna be people on both sides of the aisle on this conversation, and they're both valid. But to me, like, when you are staying at either the attached hotel or the hotel that's the main hotel where Pokemon and Paperlay and the tournament organizers and most of the players, like, if everyone's there, you feel much more a part of the weekend. You feel more a part of the community than if you rented an Airbnb 20 minutes away. Like, so I've always been the person that, like, if I can get a hotel that's across the street from the venue or like relatively close and it's only $50 more, like, obviously $50 is not the same to everybody. So some people, they can't do that, but like, I'm willing to pay that additional price for the ease of being closer in the morning, not having to, Uber over or get up earlier just to get there on time. And also running into all the other community members and players and friends that that are also staying there.
Yeah, like there's like the hotel lobbies, like you cannot get the hotel lobbies if you're an Airbnb, but like everybody hanging out, even if you're not hanging out, it's really cool to like be walking back to your room and you just see Pokemon people everywhere. Like everybody has like all the TCG people, especially, like they have their playmats out and all their cards. Like, it's a different atmosphere, which I think actually really lends to it. If you are just staying in a hotel in the middle of nowhere or an Airbnb in the middle of nowhere, I do think Airbnb with friends, if you're like down for that, I do think that can be fun as well. But But I'll always be like, if you can get a place, like the hotel nearby is, price aside, always the best experience wise.
Yeah, 100%. No, we have another kind of in the same vein from AMJ or AMJ. Apologize, AMJ. Uh, I'm actually kind of curious about how much the expenses are when it comes to going to Pokemon tournaments. I can think of renting a hotel for a few days or something similar and getting food and snacks for the tournament. Travel expenses can vary depending if people go in car or in plane. What else is there? So let's say Sierra Dawn is traveling to the Vancouver Regional Championships next weekend. What should you be expecting to have as an expense for the weekend?
So I think the biggest expense that people miss most of the time is the leisure aspect of it all. Because you can account for, oh, well, I'm going to spend $50 a day max on food. 3 meals, roughly $15 a meal, 20 for dinner, etc. But if you are at an event with friends, like we were talking about activities we like to do, like do an escape room, like there's mini golf, there's karaoke, like you're hanging out with a bunch of people and there's going to be activities that come up because people want to hang out and have like do stuff at the end of the day. And if you don't want to do that or etc., like that's also fine. But there's definitely been times where going into an event, I'm like, I don't really have the most money to spend. I'm not going to then find myself in a position where I am forking out a little extra money because I value being able to spend that time with my friends as opposed to sitting out because I've already traveled this way, right? I'm already out here doing the thing. And like that is something that can be cut if you do need to do regionals on a budget. But if you are looking at like where money does go for an event, like that is definitely the biggest unplanned for one.
Yeah, I think for me the expense I look at the most, because obviously like a flight and a hotel room or Airbnb, they're non-negotiable, right? Like yes, you can try to find a hotel that's 100 compared to 160 a night or 200 a night or whatever. So like you have some control over there, but you have to get there and you have to sleep somewhere. So like those are
Yeah.
just you don't even worry about, like just do whatever fits into your budget. But the one I always look at is I always see how long it is from the airport to the hotel or the airport to the convention center, how much that Uber ride is going to be compared to taking a train or taking a shuttle or something. Like I know when we were in Charlotte, they had a shuttle that was like $3. But I remember last year when I went to Charlotte, I waited like an hour and a half for that shuttle, so for it to come. So this year I was like, I would much rather pay $30 for the Uber ride to the venue than wait an hour and a half and pay $3. Like not everyone's in that same position, I understand. But to me, I was like, that was a much better value of my time. So I'm always looking like in the morning, how long is that like when you have to go back to the airport to leave, like that Monday morning, how long is the drive? How much does that Uber ride cost compared to, getting other ways of traveling? So like that's the thing I'm always looking at is Uber expenses or travel expenses.
Yeah, Uber expenses in general too, I think is a great one because if you're looking at okay ways that I can make this event work on a budget and get a hotel that's a 10-minute drive away, you might save $30-$50 a night. But if you have a $10-$15 Uber in the morning, followed by a $10-$15 Uber on the way back, not counting if you go
Exactly.
for anywhere, like that does actually add up really fast. Like the one from the airport to the hotel, you also have to keep in mind that one is kind of a non-negotiable at times, but you do have to kind of keep in mind when you are booking where you want, like how much that is going to cost overall because you might be like saving a good chunk of money, but if it costs you $40-$50 extra a day in Uber costs, like what'd you really save, honestly?
Yeah, like in Japan, like the hotel where the SMEs were at, we were like well over a 20-minute walk. And it's the middle of August in Japan in 100 degrees, and I have to get there at 6:30 or 7, 6:45 in the morning. Like I'm not showing up to the venue for the next 12 hours drenched in sweat. You know what I mean? Like, so I would
Yeah.
take an Uber, and that was I was like $10 every way. So that, like, over the course of a whole week, that was like 60-70 bucks additional of every time you had to do it, instead of walking in 100 degrees for 20 plus minutes.
That one was tough because I definitely at a different hotel. I think it was the complete opposite direction, 20 minutes the opposite direction, but same thing. Like, it was walkable, but also with like the heat exhaustion I had and everything else, like it got to an angle where it was like, if there's not an Uber waiting for me outside, I cannot go outside. Like, I cannot, like, that was tough. I think too, VGC, we do definitely have it nice because of the fact that everything's on the game. An extra cost, though, if you are from the TCG, is you do have cards and like all of that extra stuff you're gonna have to be looking at. The cards to play the event, sleeves, etc. Because that kind of sneaks up on you. Like, even when I was playing, I would kind of budget out where I was for an event, and I would never keep in mind that, hey, maybe I need to spend $30 to $100 to kind of like refine my deck a bit. If you don't have a deck at all, then good luck. You're now spending like more money on it. But that's definitely one that it's very nice in VGC that we don't have to worry about that.
Right. Or you want to re-sleeve with like a fresh pack of sleeves before an event, and it costs you $13 that like you weren't planning on spending, and you're like, man, I don't have a choice.
Especially all the sleeve issues they have now. Like, everyone like re-sleeves before an event because so many people get DQ'd. Yeah, like that adds up. Like, TCG is an expensive hobby. Like, for all the conversation about how long it takes to get Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet, like, at least you're not having to pay $20 for each one of those Pokemon, because jeez, that adds up in TCG so fast.
Yeah, or $12 for your 4 Steel Stones, what I had to pay, you know?
Yeah. Yup. 100%. All right. Next question. I'm talking about stuff that you have to do for your Pokemon to be able to play the game. This is coming up for Bruno. What's your favorite and least favorite quality of life edition that they made in Scarlet and Violet?
Ooh, shout out to Bruno. That's my guy.
Yeah, I got a really particular one.
You go first.
For least favorite, drives me nuts. And I don't know if this is going to be like wide scale, but there's going to be one person sitting out there being like, Sierra spitting right now. So annoying. So the map, you can zoom in and out of the map. Super, super cool. The issue is you can only zoom in once and like out once. If you try to zoom out a second time, it actually bounces back to just like a map overlay with images of like the different gym leaders and stuff and where to go, and you can't fast travel to them. So it's like you can press it all the time. It takes a few seconds to load. You're there. You can't do anything. You have to load back. That is so dumb. Like, I understand that it's like you get to see where everything is. It's supposed to help you out, but you can't even fully zoom out of the map while still being able to click on the things and fast travel and zoom the map. And it's just like in the way. Like, it's so annoying. So it easily takes the cake for least favorite quality of life edition, because I think it's just very bad designed.
Yeah, I can think of my least favorite. I'm struggling on my favorite part of it, but for me, the least favorite stuff is on the pictures and on the camera, and I think it's just really frustrating when you want to try to get a specific Pokemon in your background for the stuff, and you got to throw it out, and you have to move, but you can't move too fast because then they're going to start running and it changes the angle, and like then you have to wait 45 seconds for them to fall asleep, because if you don't, they're just going to run away, and then you have to go into the side menu with like the Pokedex and all the stuff, and then like go to your trainer card and then hit the button to change your trainer icon, and then look at all the stuff. And then if you want to do your other photo, I forget the second photo, but then you got to do it all over again. And like, I just wish it was better designed, the photo. So like, I wish you could take a photo just in normal circumstance and then post it, like decide like change header or change profile icon or whatever, and then choose one of your in-game photos that you took.
That would be so good.
Instead of doing the 15 steps, and then, oh my god, my shiny Whimsicott actually moved behind me while I was in the menus, and I gotta restart it again, and like, so frustrating.
No, I think being able to pick from a picture that you already did would be amazing. I do super agree with that. So then what's our
favorite quality of life update?
So I'll start. The second DLC, you do need to do a little bit of grinding, but it's not nearly as much. but the item printer.
Yeah.
Realistically, like once you have enough of like Pokemon items from them as well as the BP, which I know that we have debated about before, but if you just sit and let other people barbecue for you, you get that pretty fast. But the item printer prints things out so insanely fast. Like I have maxed out on Terra shards to where I'm like I can't even use the item print anymore because I feel like it's a waste. I've gotten so much money from it, all these different items. I've gotten a bunch of ability patches. Like I think that has been a great addition. I also think that the Fresh Start Mochi was a great addition. That's on my favorite list, but my least favorite thing about it is it's terrible to get. So that's like in
Yeah.
the middle. There's a favorite attribute about it and a least favorite. But I do think for as much as there is complaints about getting stuff in the game, I think the game very much rewards you for playing the game. If you don't like to do anything much other than VGC, I could understand that like these tasks, like there is quite a bit to them, so it is not going to be fun. But the game does really much reward you for just casually playing the game. And I think those are some good quality additions to reward that.
Yeah, and I don't know if this counts as quality of life because it's like a mechanic of the game. It's like a core aspect of the traversal and stuff, but like I will say the ride mechanic here is significantly better than it was in Legends
Yeah.
Arceus, as is
Yeah.
like the catch mechanics, like throw like you're able to chuck it from further, more precise. It feels like so like the mechanics from Legends Arceus that they improved upon. I don't know if that counts as quality of life for Bruno's question, but like that's what I'm gonna say is my favorite addition to Scarlet and Violet is like Miraidon and Koraidon are way more fun to ride on and traverse on and travel and climb on than the Legends Arceus Pokemon were.
Yeah, I would love to see. I'd be curious on how they expand on that because I think that I don't like it story wise that they're like, oh, haha, you found this huge bad beast, and now you just like ride around on them like a motorcycle and blah blah. I think that whole story aspect of it is silly, but I do think the ride mechanic is like very much so needed and how they implemented that. I'd be curious about how they do that in the future, but I do think that was really well done. Like it seems very smooth. Like there's just like a bunch of rocks out like in the world, but you're able to climb over them. You're able to glide. I think the adding straight gliding in the second DLC also was a really really good improvement, but I do think that's like the best ride Pokemon that they've had.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, we got another Scarlet and Violet question from how's it G brand VGC, is it, or did we mess that? Did I mess that up on my copy of their
I think G brand VGC.
Okay, just want to make sure. I apologize if we got it wrong. You'll see yourself in the Discord. You'll know. This is, what have you enjoyed the most about Scarlet and Violet?
Ooh. Hmm.
It's tough because, like, what do we just want to say the metagame? Like, I feel like it's like kind of a cop out if we just say that,
It's interesting because I don't feel overly passionate about something that I enjoyed the most about Scarlet and Violet, but I'm not sitting here either like, oh, it was a terrible game and I disliked a bunch of things, right? I'm just having trouble thinking of like if I have to say like what I enjoyed the most, then that's kind of problematic. I do think the way that they did the world, especially when we're looking at like the DLC 1 and 2, like the more things that they added, I think it's fun to just keep exploring, despite the fact that it could have potentially been boring to go back in the same area. It doesn't necessarily feel like that, and I know that that seems like so silly, but I think when we're looking at a Pokemon game that doesn't necessarily reward you for going back on certain routes that you've been on, I like the fact that there is that replayability.
Yeah, I think it's a tough question because there's a lot of great things that the game does, and then obviously some head scratchers as well. And like some of it's related to the competitive aspects, like terrestrializing, and then so it's also frustrating on the competitive aspect, like the Tatsugiri being invulnerable, and whatever. I'm not going to go down that hill that I always go down, but I think like the thing I enjoyed the most about playing Scarlet and Violet, like as a casual just going through the game, like I really liked the school aspect of it. I really thought it tied the region together. You had your classmates, you had kids that were 6 years old and like 30-year-old dudes that were also at the academy. Like it made like, it kind of like, this was one of the major regions in Pokemon where every game, the whole world revolves around Pokemon, right? Like everybody has Oddish or Bulbasaurs in their gardens and, whatever. And they have like a water Pokemon helping them with the pool and stuff. Like, so every game is about the Pokemon and how they interact with humanity. But like this region, Paldea, felt like the most synergistic to like this entire map synergizes and revolves around Pokemon. I feel like kind of more than the other regions did. So I really like that everybody goes to school, everybody goes to the academy. The academy is a part of the government because they're trying to, stop Team Star and stuff. And like I don't know, this region felt very well connected and to the Pokemon, yin and yang to me.
It's funny because I didn't necessarily like the academy. More so, like, I could understand your opinion about it in terms of like the interconnectiveness of the world and all of that. But I think the actual academy itself was kind of underwhelming and boring. I think that like the other things, like the story element of it, wasn't bad. But when I'm actually looking at like the time that I did spend in the academy, because I did try and go through some of the classes, I did try to like kind of mill around that area. Like that kind of felt a little underwhelming to me. So I think if they improved upon that, I could be on your point like a little bit more. I will say my least favorite thing about the whole academy thing though is clothes are kind of ugly, and we're forced to wear them. How do we go from Sun and Moon and Sword and Shield? Even X and Y has pretty decent clothes. And then we're like, you get to choose out of these few like academy things. Like,
and they all look bad. You have 4 options and none of them are good.
Like, I would have been okay with, during your story while you're doing your treasure hunt, your first year. Oh, you did your treasure hunt. Now you're a second year where you want. Like, I don't know, something.
Right. Or like you can't mix and match. Like, why can't I take the summer shirt and the autumn pants and the winter boots? Or like it doesn't matter. Let me wear whatever I want. Like, I know we're in a school and schools have dress codes, but like let me mix and match what the things, because like, it doesn't matter if I'm like, oh, you wear the summer outfit in the summertime just like you would at real school. But sometimes I'm going to in this school, I'm not always in summer weather, right? I go up to the snow caps up top where it's cold, but I can still wear the summer outfit. Like, yeah, that was the biggest fumble. Is like X and Y started the greatest thing they've ever done in character customization, and everything was so fashionable and stuff. And it's only gotten better through Gen 7 and Gen 8, and then Scarlet and Violet, they're like, nope, we're going to be lame and follow the school policy.
Which is dumb, by the way, because the clothing customization they give you after the festival, and you can wear you can wear different clothes that you rock. So it's like it's inconsistent with itself. Like I don't understand that. Like if you're like, all right, you can already just like wear this festival thing, but all year round in your classes, we don't actually care.
Yeah, you can wear the Kitakami the outfit, but you can wear that to your biology class. But you can't mix and match your real school uniform, but you can wear another region's festival outfit to class.
Yeah, like make it make sense. Like I don't like that irked me. That genuinely irked me. But yeah, that was a silly one. All right, last question. We did not go through these questions nearly as fast as we thought that we did. That is for sure. So there's a really fun meta conversation that we may maybe have another day. But our final question, we're gonna end it on a chill note, is coming up from Banjo. Favorite city music from any Pokemon game? I'm gonna kind of extend it to any music. We can kind of talk about both. But there is a lot of good music that.
Well, it's very apropos of Banjo to ask this question, since that is that is a musical instrument. So
is it?
That's you know what, Banjo Kazooie when I was a kid. So obviously I couldn't spell, right? I'm 5 years old. I don't know but his name is Banjo and the friend's Kazooie. So like I'm Joe. I was, oh my god, it's like, I'm Banjo. And then when I learned to spell, and his name was not Joe at the end, that was a tough day for me. I'm like, no, I am no longer Banjo Kazooie because
you're no longer.
We don't spell it the same way.
Damn, that's rough.
I'm trying to think. So I had an answer for the city. So I don't know about general overall music because like I was just thinking about my favorite city song, and I think if there's like one song that I would always go back to like on a YouTube playlist and listen to like the extended 30-minute version of it, I think it's Ecruteak City from the Heart Gold and Soul Silver remix specifically. I think that song is just like perfect. It takes you on a journey on that loop. Like it's like all the.
All right, sing it for a second. Sing it for a second.
No, it's like it's got all these like little chimes and stuff. It's like really cool. Like down, down, down. I don't know, whatever. You know what Ecruteak City is if you play Gen 2. Whatever.
I played Gen 2. I don't remember it. There's been how many gens of Pokemon?
I can't sing no lyrics. People know what I'm talking about. They can Google it.
They sing the melody.
So there's like a thing in the beginning before the music starts. That's why it's cool. I like the Heart Gold Soul Silver remix of Ecruteak City.
I have to say, I think like in terms of city music, it's funny because it's more so a town, but the Little Root Town theme.
That's a good one.
It's amazing, especially too. There is one. I can't remember quite the name of it on YouTube, but there was a bunch of different like lo-fi artists kind of coming together for a collab, and there was a bunch of different Gen 3 music redone, and their Little Root Town was amazing. There's also people that do like guitar covers of it, and there was like one day I just sat and watched this one like TikTok loop of this person playing the Little Root Town theme on their guitar, and like for like 20 minutes, and I just bawled my eyes out the entire time. It was beautiful. Like it is the best theme. It's so well done. It's amazing.
I think in like general Pokemon music songs that stick out to me, I know Daz and I used to meme a lot in Sword and Shield about Mustard 2 specifically. That if you were playing on ladder and you didn't have Mustard 2 as your song, like you were actually throwing, because that song is such an absolute banger. Zinnia's theme from ORAS, that is an absolute certified banger as well. 100%. Like the Glitch X remixes and stuff. Like
yes,
oh, such a great song.
Yes. Another one like the memories, like the do 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 do. Like it's amazing. That was also absolutely fantastic. That was a really good one from Gen 5.
Mm-hmm. I think for me also
phenomenal.
Lance's theme, which is like kind of also gets repurposed in Gen 2 to like kind of Lugia also, but like the dun, 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 like that first intense
the classic.
Like that song, like no matter where I am, like that is like I'm ready to go. I'm ready to fight. Like this is intense. This is a battle. Like I could listen to 4 hours in a row of remixes of that song, like all different kinds of remixes because it's so good. And they got that one right. That was in Gen 1. They got that one right.
Yeah, it was good. There was another one too. I wish I could remember what it was called. I'm pretty sure it is from Gen 5 though. So there might be somebody in the comments that can say. But it's one of the legendary themes, and it's super like chaotic but epic. And at one point, there's like a tempo change, and it starts to really slow down.
Yeah, it's Gen 5. Like, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and then it starts speeding back up, and it's so epic. Like that gets me hyped every single time. It's so well done. I wish I could remember what it was called, but it's very well done.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people like enjoy the Gen 5 music. Like my friend Tommy Cooley, and I always fight with him because he says Gen 5 is the best when it comes to music. And like we spent one night just like listening to every song of every generation, just going back and forth and comparing it to like, okay, how's the Gen 7 battle theme versus the Gen 5 battle theme, and how's the Gen 7 daycare versus Gen 5 daycare, like just going back and forth on it. So that's a lot of people's probably favorites are the Gen 5 music.
Before we move on from music, though, I know we're reaching the end of this. I just have to say, though, what's also very epic, which is so sad they don't do anymore, was the world's themes. The in-game
Yes.
world theme. Like, for those who have maybe joined more recently into the community, they used to have a specialized world theme that played
And
during
Stadium.
the world. Like, yeah, like they would be like the only people who would ever get to hear it in game were the two world's finalists as they sat down across the table and played the game. It was never played anywhere else. So anyone watching could hear it, but like you'll never be able to play to that music. And I thought that was the coolest thing. And it was so like epic. And they stopped doing that. I would love to bring that back because like the themes never deviated too far. It was like a upscaled, more epic version of the battle music, but it was so cool.
Yeah, and the whole environments would change. Like you're not used to like back this because this was back in Gen 6. So like instead of just the generic backgrounds of nothingness, like you had a stadium. This is the precursors to the stadiums we have now in Sword and Shield and in Scarlet and Violet. Like the colors would be different. There'd be a bunch of like purple and flashing lights and like all these things to show the spectacle of this is the world championship match, and like people would look forward to it every year to see like what's the world's design, you know, in X and Y versus what's the world's design in ORS and stuff. And they did stop it. I don't know if it's they probably just didn't think like it was important enough on a return on investment for like how much effort they had to put in just for like the one match on it. But like, man, if they really should have, if I'm president of Pokemon one day, that's my first initiative is bring the world's theme back.
We're gonna have to start a movement so they know that people want this. Because I do think that it was just I could understand how it'd be deemed unnecessary, but like
it added to the atmosphere 100%.
Man, was it cool. Like that's for sure. Yeah, so that'll be we'll think of a hashtag for it. We'll try and get the world themes back. But all right. Our very final question, we'll put this one as our official question of the day, and it has been requested many weeks in a row.
Too many times.
Finally, too many times, considering the scope of the question. So thank you, y'all did this. What Pokemon do you think you could beat in a fight, and why?
It was what we say for anyone who's not in the Discord, which you should join our Discord to be part of the conversations. It is every single time that we ask for a question of the week, without fail, multiple times a week. Which Pokemon could you beat in a fight and why? And I feel like there's a lot that we could beat in a fight, right? Like any of the baby Pokemon, like, but like, do you want to punch a Togepi in the face? Like, I don't really want to do that. So the question is like, which Pokemon do you want to punch in the face and why?
I don't think it has to be one. This is like, which could you beat in a fight? Like, if you're fighting for your life and you have to punch that Togepi in the face, like would you beat it?
I could wreck a Magby's day, but I don't want to. You know what I mean?
Where this gets interesting is because there are some Pokemon that realistically, size-wise, yeah, if you wanted to punt that thing across the football field, you 100% could. But like these Pokemon have fire, they have electricity. Like what? But when you touch it, like I don't know how much like electricity a Joltik has in it. Size-wise, you can just step on it and it's done. When you step on it, is it about to electrocute you to death? That's like where I think this starts to get actually quite to be an interesting conversation, as opposed to just like
they're fighting at full power. Pokemon. All we have are fists, and they have their elements. Okay,
we only got these two fists, and you know they can electrocute us. Maybe they can't stand up to these fists, but they could electrocute.
So you probably want to choose a normal type then, right? Because they wouldn't have any extra powers. Like you would just want to just scrap with a Miltank, get revenge from all the trauma Whitney caused.
Did you not play enough of Gen 2 and see what Whitney's Miltank did to like your entire Pokemon team? Like, I don't think I'd be beating that one in a fight.
Yeah. So then, what's like a small like? I would very much enjoy the chance to fight Smeargle because it doesn't know any moves. It only instructs, and the only thing I can do is punch. Right? I don't have any moves. So it doesn't just wail away at Smeargle and get payback for all the years of trauma that it caused.
Yeah, there you go. there's a good chunk of Pokemon I can beat in a fight. Like, as long as, like, when I, like, hit it, it doesn't, like, electrocute me or burn me to death. Like, I feel like it's a fair shot, you know, as long as it's within my, like, weight range.
You gotta put your flag in the sand or whatever. You have to state a Pokemon. I stated one. You can't get out of this.
Bellsprout.
Wow. Hurting the environment.
It would just be easy. Like,
especially when you had the Weeping Bell team or whatever.
Honestly, there's a Bellsprout on my mouse pad, and I looked down. I was looking at all the Pokemon. I was like, Tangela, like, it could probably wrap a vine around you. Like, Executor, absolutely not. Weeping Bell, no. Bellsprout, I could punch that in the face. Like, that would go down.
It's already shocked. It's already, you know, so.
Yeah. Oddish is another good one. Like, it is a very, like,
you could fight your friend Piplup. I don't know if you want to, but you would win that fight.
I mean, like, yeah, I would win it, but, like, if we're talking about straight, like, could you beat in a fight? Like, yeah, you know, like, a little Fletchling, like, yeah, it's cooked, but, like,
who would win? One of every Pokemon or a billion Sierra Dawns? That's the question.
I'm done for. I have it done for. I still think my favorite iteration of this question, was, like, if you had to, like, beat up a Pokemon with a hammer, which one would you pick? Like, it was no longer like, what could you beat in a fight? But if you were just like, you had to take a Pokemon on 1v1 and all you had was a hammer, what Pokemon would you pick? I am not going to share that is one for the Discord people to discuss. But yeah, that's definitely a iteration of the question. That is
just
say
Hypno to make Moxie mad or drowsy or whatever.
Exactly. But yeah, I think that was a great question. Great questions all around. Anyone who is listening, if we did not get to your question, make sure to be posted them on our podcast record day, as we always do say when we are going to record, so you can get your question in so we can do a question of the week. I'm sure next off season that we have, we can go back and do more questions like this time. But yeah, any final words before we wrap this up?
You know, I'm excited to get back to real conversation. We made it through the long stretch here. We were worried, like, man, are we going to have enough content to post every week? Like, I knew we were going to have an episode, but, like, were we going to be able to satisfy the listeners every week and have entertaining stuff? And we made it through. And now, instead of being relieved that we made it through, now I'm just worried about the post-NAIC stretch to the whenever Hawaii gets announced stretch, where there are no events. There's not allowed to be any events. Like, so instead of being happy we made it through this stretch, I'm now just worried about the future stretch that we're also going to have to make it through.
We'll get to that bridge when we get there. I am not worried. I'm not worried. I also, the past few episodes, like, even though it's been off season, I still think it's been fun. So, of course, we'd always love to hear from you. But if you made it to this point in the podcast, thank you so much for listening. Next week for realsies this time, because I did say last week that, like, this week would have been a regular preview. Next week for real will be our Vancouver preview as we start talking about the event we're keeping an eye on for. And, you know, the meta and where all that is going. Make sure to be joining the Discord. Follow us on Twitter for updates. But of course, we hope that you have a great week. Enjoy, and we'll see you back here real soon.